please.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in rural Alberta my whole life. I hated school. Look at me now. I've never left it. I absolutely hated school, and I believe I grew up in a system that just wasn't good for kids. And I think um, I have a passion to make it better. And it's kind of that fills my bucket is how do we make the system better for kids? And so when I was actually in post-secondary, I was at a crossroads of whether being a medical microbiologist or a teacher. Um, just think of COVID. Either way, you're screwed. Um, but I took the teacher route. Didn't feel that I could sit and look at a petri dish because I like people too much. And then I moved to northern Alberta, which is very rural. And I lived in Fox Lake, which is a fly-in First Nations community for 5 years. And then I've been in Fort Vermilion ever since. And so going on my 24th year in Fort Vermilion. But I think the biggest thing for me is how do we make a system better? I look at every challenge as an opportunity to change the system. And how do I view a system? How do I wean myself off of a system that is not adequately funded? So yes, it's funded, but how do I gain more money or gain more capital from my neighboring communities in order to bring better programming and not be so dependent on just the pennies that you get from a department? And so we started a program when I first started, as I was the director of climate and culture and then director of high school completion. And one of the biggest projects we started with was a farm program that was Rocky Acres. And we did it through a grant program. And we built an entire farm from scratch in 4 months. And then have continued to run that program in the Rocky Lane area where agriculture is a big piece. But adhering to what societal norms in each of our communities exist, how do we feed into what actually is required? So for us, the biggest push in the last little bit, and I'll share it probably because it's the most prevalent, is we're really moving down a collegiate model. And the collegiate model is probably the biggest undertaking I've ever encountered. It's an $11 million project. But and there's 12 different sort of academies in which kids can then really focus on a career. So again, taking the system in which, oh, you're in high school and you get to take some options. Some of them you don't even want to do, but you need to check the box to get them off. We are creating businesses and academies so that our kids can get experience in careers. That's everything from teacher education program to nursing program. Some of our kids will become pilots, so they will actually do ground school, get in a plane, finish their entire pilot school, and then potentially go on to commercial, which we can't offer, but they'll get their PPL before they leave. The key for me is how do we then use those to enhance our system? What bothers me so much in the north is we produce a lot of raw product, ship it south, and then it all comes back. And so we pay for trucking one way and we pay for trucking another way. And so what do we not have here that exists that we need to do that? So I think the biggest piece around that is every challenge that we face often is that the system that we currently work in with Alberta education doesn't work for our rural kids. It is built for urbans. It is. It's easy to run when you have 100,000 students, but it's not easy to run when you got 34 in a school and you're an hour and 45 minutes from nowhere. And so what do we need to do in that community? Either attract workers to that community and be a part of the community in doing that, or attract some sort of experience that feeds into the community that could actually become growth. And Rainbow Lake's a prime example of that, where we've seen a decline in enrollment because the oil patch, but yet now new innovations is coming out and we're getting kids more geared towards geothermal and even lithium out of well water, that extraction around that piece. And how do we move that forward? I think the biggest piece for me is how do we do that also? Instead of just kicking kids out at the end of 3 years, our goal is to keep them for 5. The government does fund them in year 4 and year 5 at a much lesser level. But then how can I generate income through small businesses? And I got a lot of this sort of learning from Green Hectares when we were talking about those things, to start small businesses, so that for those 2 years that they're there in post-secondary, they're in post-secondary with us, and tuition is free. So a lot of people, you'll probably heard of dual credit model, those sort of things. Dual credit is a flawed model because they give you very little money to actually do that. How do you generate enough cash? And the only way to do it right now, if you strictly stick to that money, is to not hire staff and then use your other money to pay for it. We're trying to each use one of those academies, the 12 streams, to really generate money, so that tuition is free. A prime example of that is our kids. We have a number of kids that want to get into business with income tax. A lot of people doing taxes, a lot of do accounting, those sort of things that manage business. So in order to teach that, we're going to run a business, and it's going to be called Edge Coffee, and it's a coffee roasting business. We supply all the coffee to schools. It'll come ground or bean. It's single origin, ethically sourced, and every month you get a different flavor. Kids will, it's not about the roasting process per se, although it does lend itself to a number of kids that can use the life skills in terms of a job to roast that. But the business kids will analyze cost production. They will analyze, which coffee made the most, which one sells the most, how do we pay taxes on that? The art community, I guess you would call it, and our stream around the fine arts, they'll do all the packaging around it. They'll do all the marketing around that. They'll tell you that it was grown at 12,000 feet and it has, hazelnut and chocolate flavors, and do all that. And then of course our hospitality section and on our academy will use it all in terms of their catering and their restaurants and those sort of things. So how do you take little pieces and infuse it so that a simple business like coffee roasting can impact 5 or 6 different streams, and the learning that has to happen around that. So it does require to form partnerships with your local college if you have one. We actually have 7, where as far south as Lethbridge in terms of a partnership. We also have SAIT, we have Northern Lakes College, Grand Prairie. We have 7 different universities we partnered with, in which this model works. And the other thing that we're doing is, rather than the university always struggling in rural Alberta to find educators, we actually hire them. So I have heavy duty equipment, or I got heavy duty mechanics. I have plumbers, I have carpenters, I have electricians, I have psychologists, I have teachers. We're hiring a nurse. So so our staff and our facilities then perpetuate the college model as well. And then we pay the college for the curriculum and of course the credentialing around that. But the rest of it comes out of our system, and the tuition that adults blended with kids, part of that comes to us as the feeder facility and covering those costs. So it's about thinking about the box differently. And that's hard sometimes when we just stick to the lines and the parameters. So there's never a line. I always have this book. It's great. It's all good managers break all the rules. And I think sometimes you really have to push around that edge to say, this isn't going to work for us. And another thing that I have a meeting next week, and another big push around it is where diplomas sit and how does it line up with our collegiate, and how do we access it differently for our kids, and moving into more like a trimester system, so that our kids would, in the 3rd trimester, which would be like May 2nd to the middle of August, would have work experience in the career path they have. So the 40 credits that they gain at high school is actually in the passion in the field that they're actually in, rather than just taking options to fulfill a requirement around graduation. So that's probably the smallest big project. It's like having 12 other companies within a jurisdiction. So it's not for the faint of heart, for sure. But and not everyone will generate money, but there's a cost. Like if you look at the teacher one, for us, we pay for full tuition for teachers. So if a kid graduates our system, or a parent in our community wants to become a teacher, it's a full ride. You owe us 2 years when you finish, and we pay your entire degree. That is a savings to us, rather than spending $100,000 a year in hopes that we go to career fairs to hire somebody that might stay 4 or 5 years. They get married, have kids, and want to move back to grandma. And so our locally growing, how do we take the talent that we have and locally grow it, is what we're all about. And we've seen huge success. We've pulled out 40 some local teachers out of the program. We currently have 39 in it, and they come out every year around that. Our goal is to get to 50, and that is our recruitment model for the most part. I believe we're the only jurisdiction in Zone 1 that's fully staffed, and have been for the last 3 years, which I keep touching wood because that's not a easy feat these days to be fully staffed. There's not that many people in the system, but that's kind of who I am in terms of passion. Of course, we're down the reading and numeracy and all of those other pieces, but how do you make a system that was built on the Industrial Revolution model that really shouldn't, like, it hasn't really dynamically changed in 100 years. So how do we take it and, put it on steroids and say, this is what we actually need for kids, and also drag post-secondaries along? The good part about post-secondaries is financially, they now need money because of the cutbacks. And so you become much more of an effective partner when you can give a full cohort, or you can, I'm going to give you, right now, we have 39 kids. We weren't supposed to start until the fall, but start dates, I hate arbitrary dates. So we already have 39 kids in. Screw that. We're not waiting until the fall of 24. Let's go. And how do you partner with it? I bug colleges because I say, listen, if you partner with us and the kid starts there, if they get a diploma or they get even their first year, you got to think that and it's a very bad analogy, you're the first pack of cigarettes. They probably aren't going to change the flavor. They're probably going to finish with you. That's more money for you. Like, look at your business model here. If you do a fantastic job with our dual credit, when we know that kids that start dual credit school, kids that start post-secondary, 90% of them go on to finish if they started in high school. And the ones that don't. So what are we doing here? Like, let's rethink this. And so we were lucky enough to get grant money to get equipment, $7 million worth of equipment. It's coming in from, like I said, another example is heavy duty equipment operator. They're going to work on a simulator. They're going to play with the equipment on the simulator. Once they pass that, we're going to actually put them on real equipment. There's some land that needs to be reclaimed for our local government. We're going to go reclaim that. We're going to turn it into a campsite. They're going to build cabins to put on there. They're going to put in water, sewer, all of those sort of things. And every 2 years, they're going to be kicked out of the industry where we've actually trained them and saved companies money because they're trained before they get there. They have all their safety tickets. They know how to drive a rock truck. They know how to drive a hoe. They know how to drive a processor. And we've got a large group of kids that are going to work in that field. So that's really sort of where we're headed. And like I said, we've been at it for 3 years and have now got 39. I suspect, my prediction is we'll have over 100 kids in post-secondary with Fort Vermilion School Division next year, and probably close to 200 the year after that. So I'll be quiet.
And it is not a giant school division.
No, we are not. It's interesting. So since I've taken over 8 years now in this chair, that's hard to believe. I had hair back then, I think. We've come up almost 1,000 kids. So we're just over 4,000 kids, and we're the size of New Brunswick geographically. So I usually put on about 60,000 kilometers a year in a car, just traveling. I should just get a plane, but maybe I'll get my pilot's license with the kids. That's the plan,
right.
Maybe.
Exactly. Oh, Mike, I am such